Before we even dive into how to look for markets, how to become a market vendor, we have to talk about scams because scammers be scamming. Hi, I'm Brittany. I run my small handmade business, Ginger Patch Designs, out of my home, and I've been a market vendor for 8 years. You know, when I was planning this series and I was really excited, I was like, obviously, step one, how to find the events. And when I was doing my brainstorming, doing my homework, taking notes, scams just kept coming up, like how to avoid them, everything with emailing and paying online. And I was like, we've got to hold the phone. We've got to talk about scams first. It needs its own video because it's so bad, y'all. They are so bad. The scammers are good. They're really good at what they do. But if you have never been on the market scene, you could easily get gypped. With everything going online and paying online and communicating online, that's super convenient, especially as busy business owners, but that's how they get you. So let's talk about it. This is part 1 of the Market Vendor series where I'm going to be sharing everything that I've learned about how to break into the market scene, tips, do's and don'ts for being successful. For the purpose of this video and focusing on these public event types of scams, I'm going to be focusing on social media because that is where the scammers be scamming. In part 2 of this video, I will go into more depth about how we can actually find events, like a great starting place. And so I'm not going to go into depth with that here. One of the best places to find events is Facebook. It's a very well-used platform. They have the events that you can create. They have groups for vendors that event coordinators can make. But Facebook is a double-edged sword. It is a great place to find events. It is honestly where I find the bulk of my events. They know we are on there, and so they lurk in these Facebook groups and on these event pages, literally looking for vendors like you and me to inquire about the event so that they can then message that person directly and start their little scam. So before we dive into how to actually spot scammers and understand the language that they use and how they try to rope you in and all of that good stuff, because it is not always as obvious as you think it is, we need to understand how event coordinators for these public in-person markets and festivals actually communicate. Again, I will go into more detail in future parts to this series as far as how to find events and further communicating with event coordinators. But for this video, just know that no matter the size of the event, whether it's a small one at a little church or it's a big 3 or 4 day festival, there are event coordinators. Event coordinators are the point of contact between everything to do with the event and the vendors. Now, smaller events, most events typically have one event coordinator, but the larger events oftentimes do have 2 or even 3 points of contact. But the point is, these event coordinators are very forthcoming with their methods of communication, whether it be emails or phone numbers, because that is literally their job as the coordinator, is to communicate with you. The event coordinators are the ones posting on the event pages, answering people's questions in the comments, messaging people, vendors like us that have questions. However, public events on Facebook, whether it be a group or an event, public events mean anyone can go on those pages and claim that they are the event coordinator and begin directly messaging someone for payment. This literally happened to me last summer, and I'm a veteran market vendor. This will happen so fast because they're so good and fast and pushy, and they are literally waiting for you to respond so they can quickly get back to you. And it can happen so fast that you might get duped before you even realize that you are not talking to the right person. This will happen so fast. If you're not careful, it will be too late before you realize they were the wrong person, and now you're out anywhere from $50 to $150 depending on what they ask for, because they're not going to ask for an exorbitant amount. They know that typical market fees are less than $200, more like $50, $75, or $100. And that might not sound like much to some people, but for someone who's trying to grow and build, it absolutely is. You can double check a coordinator's relation to an event by double checking the type of email provided, checking the history of the event, Facebook events sometimes have history of attendees on an event page, and asking other people about it, especially if it's smaller and local. Event coordinators are typically very open to questions, very patient and kind, and just generally like really nice people most of the time. Again, we'll talk more about that in future videos. But they behave this way because they literally expect vendors like you and me to have a bunch of questions. It's their job to answer those questions. So with that, if you are messaging someone that just seems short, clipped, pushy, or it just seems off, if you just have this feeling that it's off, go a different route to verify their identity. So this leads us into red flags for scammers. What to look for to spot a scammer. In no particular order, the first red flag for scammers is rudeness. Most event coordinators are pretty great. I mean, sometimes you might meet one that's just not that nice, and that will happen, and it's fine. But just because they're not nice doesn't mean that they're a scammer. But my personal opinion is that if a legit coordinator is being very short with me or rude with me or pushy, we'll talk more about pushy in a second, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're a scammer. However, my personal opinion is that if a legit coordinator is being very short with me or rude when I'm making very expected inquiries about a market, then that is 100% a red flag to me, and it makes me not want to do the event at all. Maybe they were a scammer, maybe they weren't, but I'm gonna foresee future possible problems working with you, and so I'm out. Second red flag to look for might be the obvious, but it's not so obvious. It's the pushiness, the urgency to pay. And if you think like you can spot that a mile away, they are so good at this. So here's what to look for. Urgency is a red flag. Unless the market you are asking about is in all of a week, there is no urgency. Yes, events fill up, but they're first come, first serve, or you can have a remaining spot after returning vendors sign up. But be wary of being urged to pay immediately. Again, most event coordinators are very kind, patient, and nice, and they will give you a date to pay by. There are deadlines for everything. There is a deadline to apply. There is a waiting period to see if you were accepted. And then after you were accepted is when you will be expected to pay, and there is always a deadline associated with that payment. Now, as a side note, I have applied to events before that ask for payment with application. I never do this without checking. I check with a lot of my vendor friends that I've made over the years. You will make vendor friends too, to see if they've worked the event or they've heard of it, or if they have vendor friends that have worked it. As far as the legitimacy, I will contact the person listed. I will look it up on Facebook, like we said. I will do my homework before paying for that at checkout. I have only done that once ever, and I did do my homework beforehand. So just be aware of that as far as payment with application. There is a difference between stating the fee or requiring payment by a certain date versus pushing to pay it. This is often via Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger. I have also never signed up for an event on Instagram, but I do know that some events have their own Instagram pages. So I actually have a story of some of the things that we've just discussed. It was a public event on a Facebook page for a little town, the next town over from mine, so it was very local. And I did what a lot of vendors do. I commented on the application post, beep, boop, boop, and I received a Facebook message, which is also not unusual. Some event coordinators do message on Facebook, but what I have found is they will take all the vendor information from the applications and the people inquiring on the public forums and then email them directly. For whatever reason, I just wasn't thinking of that in that moment, even with my experience. So I indulged, I messaged her. It was a very short conversation, but I do remember that Her phrasing was just very short. The words were spelled correctly. It was proper English, if you will. That's another red flag is if they can't spell properly. That's, get out of there. But I don't know, it just felt off to me. And so I went to her Facebook profile. We had 0 common friends. Okay, this is yet another way you could double check, especially if it's something local. If you live in a small town, there is somebody that you know mutually, whether it's from church, your kids' schools, something. Okay, we had 0 mutual friends. And so that right there, I was like, I think you're a scammer. There, she had no listed job, no listed location. It's literally like she just made, it was like a bot page. So red flag. She was then, when I was kind of not really going with what she was saying, she then became, it's almost like she took it to the next step and then she became pushy. She was pushing for payment for the event, even though I still had questions. So this particular event had a Google Forms doc to apply with, which is very common. That part was not a red flag, but the name on the Google Doc application at the top was not her name. And so I asked her about it. And when I asked her about the application, it's almost like there was a switch flipped and she went to the next level into pushy town. Okay, she became very pushy for payment. She listed her payment methods, which I'm sorry, if someone says that they accept Cash App for an event, no. So it turns out the event was legit. It's just she was not legit. She was a scammer. She was trying to push to get money from me. So I blocked her and then I contacted the person on the Google Doc form directly. Before I did, I looked at her Facebook page. I tried to Google her to see if she's done past events. She had, and I sent her screenshots just letting her know like, hey, there's someone in your group trying to, or on your event page trying to scam people. And I think this is a common battle for event coordinators online because I've heard the feedback several times from my messages with other event coordinators that it's a constant battle, like deleting and blocking these scammers on their event pages. The thing I want to point out though is like she was not pushy at first. We were just briefly discussing things that anyone honestly could have made up about the event without her having known anything about the real event. All the information that she gave me was from the Facebook page. But she did not become pushy until I started asking questions. Scammers become pushy when you ask questions, which is back to my previous point. Most event coordinators are very kind and gracious and understanding that most vendors are going to have questions and it is their job to answer them. So if you are getting hit with pushiness, rudeness, clipped phrases, anything like that, stop and do your homework so you don't lose out on your money. To wrap up this point, if you're ever uncertain about anything, just don't send them your money. Maybe they're legit, but maybe they're not. Don't send them your money. Now, events have evolved over the years as far as the payment methods that they do take. I have used Venmo, PayPal, a good old-fashioned bank check. I've paid cash. There are other organizations that use Stripe online. There are many much larger events that they have their own website and you just pay on their website. That's always a safe option because if they have their own website with pictures and history and everything to do with that event, there's history to that. That is a safe option for you to submit your payment. Now let's talk about emails. Specifically Gmail accounts. Now, unless this public event is at like a church or a school or a small nonprofit, like some small event, the event coordinator should have some type of professional email. They should not be using, you should not see a personal Gmail account. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but I'm just saying if you do see that it is a Gmail account instead of like a .org or it's whatever their name at the festival or the business or the county, if the county's putting it on, etc. Just do your homework. Go through some of those steps that we just discussed as far as doing your homework online and just verifying that you're communicating with the actual legit event coordinator. Another example locally to me that just happened literally a few weeks ago. My hometown has like a Facebook page where there's like, I don't know, 10,000 people in it. And it's just like everything to do with our small town. And there are events posted there, legit ones like beauty pageants and fundraisers and whatnot, like small towns do, right? And so there was an event posted there, and I did not get a screenshot of it because she ended up being blocked and the post was deleted and all that. So I didn't get it, but it listed literally everything you would see with a typical event. And she used a real address in my hometown. When I saw the address, I knew exactly where it was. It was in the heart of downtown, in this little like courtyard type area. And I commented on it, just asking for more information. She messaged me directly, and then it was not a very long exchange before she was already pushing for information because I asked a question, and I just stopped. And then literally within an hour, she was booted out of the group, I think, and someone else had tagged me like, hey, Brittany, did you see this? Like she was a scammer. Yes, girl, thank you so much. And so even seasoned vendors like me, like I have to be careful because it can happen to anybody, and I would hate for that to happen to you. And so friends, if you have any experience with scams whatsoever, I would love if you would share your experience, preferably briefly, down in the comments, or just other tips and tricks that maybe I left out for kind of protecting yourself out there, because everything's moved digitally and paying online, which is very convenient and it's very nice when it comes to organizing your business, but it just also means that we have to be extra careful and vigilant to protect ourselves. As I said, part 2 of this series will be how to actually find markets, and then from there we'll get into how to get a cheap setup going, things you absolutely have to have and things you really don't if you're trying to do this on the cheap, how to set up a successful booth, all of the market things. This market season is my jam, and I'm here to share all my secrets. So friends, if you found this video really helpful, please give it a like, because it helps other potential or current market vendors like you find the video so they can also be helped and encouraged. So make sure to come back for part 2 next week.